PTF and Nick Tammaro back with you, taking, as promised, our first look at the Pegasus Stakes. Love these early draws, Nick. We'll start there. Very, very horse player friendly. We got days to pour over these PPs. I'm excited. It's a good card. I haven't done all the work yet, but I have done a decent dive into this Pegasus Stakes. Did you have a chance to give us an overview of the whole day? I mean, a day I imagine you're looking forward to betting.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of the kickoff to the year from a betting perspective. So definitely looking forward to it. It's a great card too. I mean, I can't imagine how hard the racing office works here to get these fields together, but it is just one big field after another. The McKnight's a really good race. That Bold Act in it, coming back for Charlie Appleby after missing in the Sycamore. The Inside Information's a fun race with Emery in there looking for another graded stake win after she took the Raven Run. Obviously the Pegasus races, the Pegasi, if you will, all look very, very good, very competitive, including the filly and mare turf, the regular turf, and this Pegasus World Cup, which, for a race that was dominated the first few years by marquee horses, these last few runnings that have been a little more wide open have actually been a lot of fun. And, in 24, we obviously saw National Treasure get the job done. It was an upset win by our collector in 23 in a race that was more wide open. From a betting perspective, these are more interesting. Obviously, it lacks the star power that you would see with in addition with a horse like Arrogate or Gunrunner, or something like that. But give me this and give me 12 horses that where it looks like 8 or 9 legitimately could win in one of those years where there really was only 1 or 2 win candidates.
That's a good point. It's interesting as this race has changed and evolved over time. I'll answer a reader question as we get to the next portion of this Pegasus preview. Somebody said to me the other day, not in the nicest terms, but that's okay. Thick skin over here. Pete, why are you always rattling on about UK prices, when you're talking about the Derby and these races? And the reason is simple. It's because at least somewhere in the world, these are actual prices on horses. And I just think it creates an interesting lens to frame a discussion. And having said that, we actually have some prices that people are actually betting on the Pegasus. Now, keep in mind, these are small markets. These are extremely subject to change. But again, I just think it's interesting from the point of view of having this conversation because, the morning line, that is a track employee's educated guess of how the public is going to bet. That gives you some information. Morning line makers have certain pressures on them to do certain things. I think it's interesting to see a market where actual money is changing hands. You can tell it to me straight, Nick. Is it a worthy exercise looking at prices like this that are not going to be available to the people, most of the people watching, just for a framing point of view, or are we better off just, talking about the race to talk about the race?
I have no idea why you wouldn't want to know any prices you could possibly get your hands on, right? You should want to know a full spectrum of how races are being bet, what people's thoughts are, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know why anybody would scoff at that. I think, just like if you're betting sports, you want to see as many numbers as possible, obviously, to get the best number. But even if you can't bet at every one of those books, you want to make sure at the book you can bet at, you're not getting rooked, right? You're not getting some really short price when you could be getting a lot more down the road. You also run the risk of I laugh in the movie Honeymoon in Vegas. Great film with Sarah Jessica.
One of the best gambling movies ever, honestly.
One of the best gambling movies. And the dentist who he's friends with, somebody comes up to him and says, hey, what's the line on the Packers? 3.5. Uptown, they're 4.5. You know what? Do me a favor. Go bet Uptown. So it's like you can't get that price everywhere. But this is, I think this is a worthy exercise, no question.
There was a book. This is so terrible because I don't remember many of the particulars. Somehow I was asked to contribute an essay to a book about it was a anthology about neighborhood poker games, and the idea was just pulling in all these writers to write some take on one obscure take on it or another. My angle I came up with was everything I needed to know about poker I learned from watching Honeymoon in Vegas, and it's called like a friendly neighborhood game of poker. I'm gonna dig it up. Maybe I can even pop up the essay I wrote in the blog at some point. But there's a lot of gambling wisdom in there, and I had forgotten that one. Let's talk about this race, my friend, and I suppose we should talk about the two at the top of the market. and I'll take them in the opposite order they're listed. White Abarrio. We talked about this race when it was run. Is it the perfect setup for a test like this, or are there some questions about White Abarrio moving forward? Where are you landing with him? Would you be buying, selling, or holding at odds of 5-2?
Oh, I'd sell 5-2. I'm not big on White Abarrio in this race. So my problem, and obviously I have a friendly and positive history with White Abarrio. So he owes me nothing. He owes Sean Borman a hell of a lot less, but he owes me nothing. I don't love White Abarrio's non-Lasix races for Saffie. I don't think he has ever run particularly well without Lasix for Saffie. His 3 best races by far were for Rick Dutrow. I don't think that horse exists anymore. I don't know where that horse came from. I don't know where he went, but I'm reasonably confident he does not exist anymore. Nothing that happened in either of his last 2 races, one with Lasix, one without, convinces me that that horse exists. If he jumps up and wins, hats off to him. He always had the talent to win a race like this. I cannot bet it at that price. The other problem with him, to me, is that they had opportunities to run him long to get him ready for this. I don't know why they went 7/8 again. It doesn't make sense. Maybe they're trying to get more speed into him. I'm interested to see what the workout reports look like, but I have way too many negative opinions on this horse to take him as one of the favorites.
Well, I get it. It was a strong opinion, well expressed. Locked is a horse that has a PP cut that looks to me like one who's supposed to do well in this race. Progressive profile, never better than when recently seen, has a good blend of speed and stamina. Locked at 5-2. I haven't made up my mind fully who I'm going to pick in here. I'll give you something by the end of the video after I get a chance to talk with you, Nick. But Locked is certainly on my short list, and 5-2 sounds like a fair price. What do you think about Locked?
Yeah, the horse to beat, no question. Didn't make out great at the post draw. 11's not ideal going a mile and an eighth at Gulfstream. But, this was always a horse that was going to make his move outside. I think if you really pushed Todd Pletcher and you told him, would you rather have the 11 or the 1 or 2, he would have taken the 11. So I don't think this is a horse he would have wanted to see get stuck inside, getting a bunch of dirt in his face. Really looked like he was hitting his stride late in the Cigar Mile, which makes sense. He's a horse that's always been built towards and geared towards more of a route of ground. Looking forward to seeing the workout report on him too. I would imagine he's trained well. He pretty much always has. So yeah, definitely the horse to beat. 5-2 is tough to take in a race like this, but there's every reason for the target to be on his back.
Let's move on down the line. I teased in the other video the idea of a Lasix question being key to this Pegasus race. And I think Saudi Crown is emblematic of that. When I look at this race and you see a horse with the fastest pace figures, with the right kind of draw for a speed horse that comes off a big figure, and he's not even the favorite, that I start to think, okay, well, this is going to be my selection in here more than likely. But then you really look back at the efforts from Saudi Crown that would win this race, and it's undeniable that he's run better with the aid of Lasix than without it. How big of a question is Lasix for you regarding Saudi Crown? And what do you think of his chances in the race and that potential price of 4-1?
I do and I don't agree with that. What I don't agree with is that his best races have all come with Lasix. His 2 good races at Fairgrounds have come with Lasix. This horse's 3-year-old races that he strung together between the Dwyer and the Breeders' Cup, not obviously including the Breeders' Cup, they were very good. The Pennsylvania Derby was very good. The Jim Dandy was very good. The paces were fast in some of those races. He ran well. He took a shot from Fort Bragg in the Dwyer that year that was very much a real one and went on with it. You know what I think the problem is, Pete? I think this horse left it all on the track in Saudi Arabia last year. I just don't think he's the same that he was that night. He was so good that night. He ran so incredibly well. It almost felt like the connections of Senor Buscador and Ushpa Tesoro should have given him some kind of tip, because he ran so well to set the pace for those 2 horses that came from so deep in the pack. And he has just not been the same since then. I know he won the race at Ellis. That was just an overnight stake, and it actually had a pretty good field for the kind of race that it was. But he had an issue coming into the race at Churchill that was supposed to be his prep, the ACAC. They ended up going to the Breeders' Cup anyway, which I found absolutely shocking and something I really did not expect from Brad Cox. He didn't run a step, and then he came back and at least looked like a complete horse again. But that's again on Lasix against Warrior Johnny. So he has a pace advantage here. He's the horse he's the one to catch. He's got an inside post with a short run to the first turn and an aggressive jockey. It's all there for him. But I can't quite come to grips with the fact that I just don't know if he's as good as he once was.
There's a couple of prices on here that I am 100% sure are going to be shorter on the day. One is the Philly Power Squeeze, who I just feel like the narrative is going to push her price down. The other is and for those who are listening, not watching, that price on Power Squeeze right now listed at 25 to 1. I'm not saying it's a bad price. Just feels like there's going to be a lot of media coverage, NBC, etc. I just feel like that's going to be lower. And then, of course, when you have the Derby winner tends to take money in all the reappearances, no matter how bad the prep was for this race. Mystik Dan listed at 9 to 1 with the bookie in question that we're showing. Probably half of that. I'm going to guess, and I'm just guessing on the tote. At that rate, I mean, I'm still taking the idea that he'll be a takeout reducer here. I just need to see more from him based on his famous horse, public horse profile, Chris Felica might say. But at 9 to 1, do you feel the same way, or has the hate gone too far on Mystik Dan? What price should this horse be, and what are his chances in the Pegasus?
I mean, Brian made him 8 to 1, so he's probably going to be about 6, 7, 8 to 1, something like that. I mean, he'll get some money based on reputation. The problem is that you don't get the public to bet you on reputation multiple times. You usually get it a few times. You're not going to get it 4, 5, 6 times. I mean, this is a horse that came off a win in the Derby and a second in the Preakness and went off 6 to 1 in the Belmont. So he's still a bit. The public's still a bit dubious of him, I should say.
Fair.
And so I don't really think he's going to get much more than that. I think he'll be about 6 or 7 to 1. Just in terms of his win chances, I don't love it. You know, I don't know really if this horse is ever going to get what he did that day in Louisville again. And I think he needed every bit of it to win.
You and I were oppo when we talked about Stronghold's last race. If I remember correctly, you were pretty negative about him. And I was saying, you know what? I think if you look at that last race as more of a training exercise than an all-out attempt to win, this is one that in sort of an old school, bring him back at 7 and then stretch him out, might just be able to be heard from. I like the fact that this horse is double-digit odds. Has your opinion evolved at all about Stronghold, or do you remain pretty skeptical?
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure I'm going to pick him. He looks like a great fit here. You were right. I'll admit it readily. I thought he'd probably be better off staying short. They get him into this 9 furlong race. And again, it really was situational, in my opinion. If you get him into a 9 furlong race that's not particularly fast paced, I think it helps a ton. And I don't think they're going to fly in here. There's a lot of horses that want to press it. There's only really one that wants to book it on the front end. I think he's going to get a great trip just off the pace. I think he's a great fit. 10, 12 to 1 easily. I imagine, he'll be somewhat popular amongst a lot of people, but he looks like a very good fit to me.
Interesting. Anything at bigger prices, Nick, that we should spend? I don't want to go through every horse, but anything that you feel strongly about that we should talk about before we button up this segment?
I mean, Crupi was pace compromised last out in the Clark. You're going to get a much bigger price than him than you've had in a while. I could think you could do worse than maybe throwing him in the 3rd and 4th slot in a try and super.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Sounds like you are very much leaning Stronghold. I'm a little more master of the obvious, looking at locked, but I think Stronghold will be on plenty of tickets. We'll be hearing much more from the In the Money media team this week. We're also going to have a special live stream at some point. Guest TBD, might get some of the NBC crew involved in that one. Easiest way to make sure you don't miss anything, subscribe to the free newsletter, inthemoneypodcast.com/email. Speaking of subscribing to things, the YouTube channel is a good place. There will be some YouTube exclusive stuff. Subscribe there. Click that notification bell so you don't miss any YouTube exclusive content. PTF and Nick Tammaro, if you're listening on the podcast side, we're back with another segment in a bit on YouTube. We'll see you soon.